Welcome to our deep dive today. We'll be looking closely at Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come. The author, Jessica Pan, calls herself a shintrovert. A shy introvert, that is.
Oh, I like that term.
She spent a whole year acting like an extrovert, and, well, we're going to explore what she discovered.
It's a really funny book, but it also makes you think.
It really does. So, like, right away, she starts with this challenge from her therapist, talk to strangers.
And not just like, hi, how are you? She had to ask them this ridiculous question in London, whether England had a queen and what her name was.
Such a weird question. I mean, why that? Did she explain?
It was about getting over that fear, of looking strange or being rude.
I guess most people just ignored her.
A lot did, but that's the point. It helped her realize it wasn't a big deal.
Interesting. So instead of worrying what people thought.
Exactly. She saw that their opinions didn't really matter.
Then later, she goes to this workshop, all about deep conversations.
Ah, yes, where they played vulnerability tennis.
Vulnerability tennis. I'm not sure I get that.
Imagine this. You and someone else taking turns revealing your, insecurities.
That sounds kind of scary.
It was in a safe space, though, and playful, and what Jessica found was, by opening up like that,
She felt more connected to the others.
it challenged that idea we have that to be accepted, we have to be perfect.
Right. Like we always have to hide our flaws.
It's kind of the opposite. Our imperfections, our vulnerabilities, that's where real connection starts.
That's a good point. Now, she also talks about friendships, especially as an adult, which is tough.
Especially in a big city like London.
Hmm.
She compares using the Bumble BFF app to dating.
Friend dating, she calls it. She went on tons of these coffee dates, I guess.
Some good, some not so good. But it shows you to build those close friendships.
It takes time, just like romantic relationships.
Right, they don't just happen overnight. You gotta put in the work.
Then there's this really moving part where her dad needs open heart surgery.
And here, extroversion shows up in a different way.
Her mom, usually pretty introverted, suddenly became this like super connector in the hospital.
Talking to staff, making sure her husband was getting the best care.
It shows how stepping outside your comfort zone can help not just you, but those around you.
Especially in tough times. Like, who knew her mom had that in her?
And speaking of surprises, Jessica ended up trying improv comedy.
Imagine that, the shintrovert on stage. But improv, for introverts, can be amazing.
It teaches you to think fast, to let go of being perfect.
And she talks about the sense of freedom she felt doing it.
It wasn't about becoming a pro, more about exploring what she was capable of.
Right. Pushing those limits we set for ourselves. Who knows what we might find if we try? It's like she uncovered this whole side of herself she didn't know was there.
And then she does the most introvert terrifying thing ever, stand-up comedy.
All that work throughout the year, it all led to this. The spotlight, thinking on her feet, connecting with an audience.
Wow, that's a huge step. How did she even prepare for that?
She talks about the mental hurdles, the emotional ones too. She actually interviewed other comedians, learned from them.
Did she mention what helped her the most?
Being vulnerable, not taking herself so seriously, those were key. She even got the audience singing Is This the Way to Amarillo during her set.
That's amazing. From shintrovert to that. Did she say how the audience reacted?
She did. Making people laugh, that feeling was incredible. But she's honest about the nerves, the self-doubt that comes with it.
Makes sense. So after the stage, she decides to try something else, hosting Thanksgiving dinner.
For a whole bunch of people, many who didn't know each other, that's tricky even for extroverts.
Oh, totally. And remember, we're talking about Jessica here. How did she handle that?
She got help. Smart move. Followed Nigella Lawson's recipes, got tips from a friend who's a great host.
Good for her. It reminds us we don't have to do everything alone.
Exactly. She planned everything out, worried about the turkey, even had activities for everyone.
I could just picture the stress. Any funny stories from that night?
Oh, yeah. Trying to fit the turkey in the oven, last-minute disasters. It never goes perfectly right.
It never does. But she pulled it off, creating this nice atmosphere for everyone. Real growth there.
It shows, even if you're an introvert, you can host. It's about finding your own way to do it.
She really learned to handle social situations in a way that works for her.
Not just enduring them anymore, but shaping them. But did she ever worry? Like, was she losing herself in all this?
I mean, becoming someone she wasn't? Did she answer that?
That's the big question at the end of the book. Did she turn into a totally different person? Always the life of the party.
I'm dying to know. Did she feel like she had to choose between being an introvert or an extrovert?
No, it wasn't about that. She gained skills, more choices. She understood herself better.
So it's not a box, this introvert-extrovert thing. It's more like A range.
We can choose how we interact, how we show up in the world. But even with all this, I bet she still felt lonely sometimes, right?
Especially doing all these things solo. Did she talk about that?
She did, about loneliness in general. It's something we all feel, no matter what.
Did she figure out a way to deal with it?
She realized it was the fear of loneliness that was holding her back. By accepting it, she could actually open up to new experiences, relationships, if we're always trying to avoid discomfort.
We miss out on a lot.
Exactly. To really face this, she did something wild. Signed up for a trip with Sorpers.me.
Soperas.me. What's that?
They send you somewhere. You don't know where till you're at the airport.
Whoa. Talk about surrendering control. Where did they send her?
Budapest? Wasn't her first choice, but she made the most of it. Exploring, trying new foods, even went to the thermal baths.
Love that attitude. Even if things aren't perfect, find the good stuff.
Being present, open to the moment, that's key. But even in Budapest, I imagine solo travel gets lonely? No.
She must have been by herself a lot. Did you talk about that?
She said connection isn't just about being around people, it's about those deep, real connections.
The ones that make you feel truly seen, understood.
Right. You can be in a crowd and still feel totally isolated.
So in Budapest, did she find any of those connections?
She did. She reached out to someone she'd met in improv class, Iniko, who lived there. They had dinner together. It was great. Shows you even random encounters can turn into something special.
The power of a network, having different kinds of people in your life.
Not about how many friends, but the quality of those friendships.
Now, it wasn't all smooth sailing for her, right? Were there times when she struggled?
Oh, definitely. Awkward moments, failed friend dates, times she just wanted to hide away.
That makes it more relatable, you know. Personal growth isn't always a straight line.
Those tough times, that's where we learn the most. But she kept going, didn't she?
And along the way, were there any, unexpected discoveries?
She found this love for improv, which she dreaded at first, became a source of confidence, creativity.
Amazing how stepping out of your comfort zone does that. Reveals hidden passions.
Like we put limits on ourselves, and Jessica's story shows what happens when we break free.
So what was it about improv that she loved so much?
The spontaneity, being in the moment with others. She even got into physical comedy, doing these outrageous bits.
Wow, from introvert to that. She really pushed her boundaries.
It's about being playful, finding the humor. Improv helps you let go, be free.
But it didn't stop there. Then came stand-up, the ultimate challenge for someone like her.
The culmination of the whole year, putting it all together, connecting with a live audience.
Nerve-wracking, for sure.
Yeah.
What did she say about preparing for it?
She was meticulous, crafting each joke, practicing her delivery, even thinking about hecklers.
Wow, she didn't leave anything to chance. Did her other experiences help, like the improv?
Definitely. Improv taught her to think fast, be in the moment, and all that vulnerability work. It helped her connect with the audience authentically.
It all came full circle.
Huh.
How did she describe performing on stage?
Exhilarating and indeed terrifying, she said. The adrenaline, the focus, and then hearing the laughter.
But stand-up's not always easy. Did you talk about the downsides, like the pressure, the vulnerability?
She did, about the ups and downs, the self-doubt that comes with any creative pursuit. It's not all glamorous.
It's good to hear that, right?
Eh.
Even those who seem confident, they struggle too.
We all do. She talked about this awful open mic night, jokes bombing, wanting to quit.
Ouch, I bet that was tough. What did she do?
She talked to another comedian, Sarah Barron, who gave her some great advice about perspective and sticking with it.
Keep going. Even when it's hard, that's the message.
Failure doesn't define us, it's all part of the journey. To deal with all this, she found this outlet kind of surprising: soccer.
Soccer. How did that fit in?
Think about it. It's a common language, a way to connect, especially when she felt out of place.
Shared interests, even something simple like sports can open doors.
At networking events, it gave her something to talk about instead of feeling awkward.
You don't have to be an expert to connect with people. Finding common ground, that's what matters.
Right, even if it's just on the surface. But with soccer, did she ever find it, wasn't enough for deeper connection?
Like, it only went so far.
That's what she realized. The conversations were fun, but stayed pretty surface level.
So it's about being aware of what we need from relationships. Some interactions might not fulfill that.
Being honest with ourselves and adjusting our approach if we need to. Now, throughout the book, she shares these personal stories, reflections.
That make it real, relatable. Is that what stood out to you?
It did. It's not just about what she did, but how she felt inside. That journey of growth.
Her anxieties about networking, trying to make friends, sharing her work.
It's so honest, and that's what resonates. We've all been there in those awkward social situations, wanting to connect, wanting to grow.
And then there's the Thanksgiving dinner story, which is hilarious. Did
Correct.
she talk about the challenges specific to being an introvert, hosting that?
All those introverted tendencies, they went into overdrive. The planning, the details, wanting to control everything.
Classic introvert. How did she cope with the stress?
Experts, again. Nigella Lawson's recipes, her host extraordinaire friend.
We need to remember that, asking for help, especially with new things.
She describes it all, the chaos, kitchen disasters, trying to fit that giant turkey in the oven.
Anyone who's hosted a big dinner knows exactly what she's talking about.
Things go wrong, you have to improvise. And that's where the fun is, sometimes.
But she did it, right? Created a welcoming space for everyone. Did she talk about how she did that with all those strangers?
She had icebreakers, seating arrangements, all planned out.
Introverts, they're great planners, organizers, can turn that into a fun social event.
Might not be the spontaneous ones, but they can make things run smoothly. But even with all that, I bet she still got anxious at times.
Did she share any of those moments?
She did. There's this part where she looks around and nobody's talking to each other.
The introvert's nightmare. Dead silence.
It shows we can't control everything. Sometimes you just create the space and let things happen.
How did she deal with that panic?
Took a deep breath, reminded herself she'd done her best, and started a conversation with someone who looked just as uncomfortable.
Sometimes you just got to take the first step.
Exactly. Be proactive, even when you're nervous. So, she didn't become this total social butterfly, did she?
But she found a way to live a better life, using both her introvert and extrovert sides.
Right. It wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about becoming a more complete version of herself.
Recognizing your strengths, your challenges, and finding a way to be in the world that feels right.
Exactly. Bringing all those parts together, introvert, extrovert, everything. That's what makes life authentic and meaningful.
It's like she's giving us a roadmap for those of us who, well, maybe aren't the most outgoing.
There's a lot we can learn from her, that's for sure. One thing that really hit home for me is this. Discomfort, it often comes before growth.
We have to push ourselves, even when it's scary.
Like Jessica talking to strangers, doing improv, stand-up. It shows we can do way more than we think we can.
Right. It's not about changing who you are, but adding to what you can do.
And then there's the whole vulnerability thing. She wasn't afraid to show her anxieties, her insecurities.
Even those embarrassing moments.
And through that, she actually connected with people more deeply.
It's like we don't have to pretend to be perfect, to be liked, to find our people.
It's those imperfections, those vulnerable parts that make us real and relatable.
She found strength in being vulnerable, not weakness.
Exactly. And one more thing that's so important, self-compassion. She messed up, doubted herself, felt like she was failing.
But she kept going.
And she learned to be kind to herself through it all. Growth isn't about being perfect, it's a journey.
We all need to hear that, especially those of us who are hard on ourselves.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling stuck, scared to try something new, think about Jessica's story.
What have you been putting off that could lead to something amazing?
Maybe it's talking to that person you've been wanting to get to know, or joining that club, or finally starting that art project.
Even a small step outside your comfort zone can make a huge difference.
New connections, new confidence, a more fulfilling life. You might just surprise yourself. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into Jessica Pan's Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come, let's condense everything we discussed into our 10-point summary.
I always find these summaries super helpful.
So number 1, Jessica, who identifies as a shintrovert, spent a whole year living like an extrovert just to see what would happen.
A pretty bold experiment.
Number 2, she forced herself to talk to strangers, using techniques like exposure therapy to conquer her social anxiety.
And she discovered that it wasn't as scary as she thought.
Right. Number 3, through vulnerability tennis, she learned that opening up about her insecurities actually helped her form deeper connections.
It's counterintuitive, but it works.
Number 4, navigating the world of adult friendships was tough. But through friend dating and lots of trial and error, Jessica learned that building meaningful relationships of any kind takes time and effort.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Number 5, life threw her some curveballs, like her dad's open heart surgery, which taught her that extroverted skills can be super valuable in unexpected situations.
Like sometimes you need to advocate for yourself or your loved ones.
Number 6, to everyone's surprise, Jessica found a love for improv comedy, which allowed her to embrace spontaneity and find joy in the unexpected.
Who knew she had that in her?
Number 7, she tackled the ultimate fear for many introverts, stand-up comedy. Through this, she learned that perseverance and self-belief are key to overcoming challenges.
Facing your fears head-on can lead to amazing things.
Number 8. Even hosting a Thanksgiving dinner, a daunting task for anyone, became a learning experience for Jessica, teaching her about organization, hospitality, and the importance of creating a welcoming atmosphere.
She really put those introverted planning skills to good use.
Number 9. Taking a surprise trip to Budapest allowed Jessica to embrace the unknown and discover the joys of solo travel, including those unexpected adventures and connections that can happen when you're open to new experiences.
Sometimes the best things in life are unplanned.
And finally, number 10. In the end, Jessica didn't transform into a completely different person. Instead, she broadened her horizons, gained confidence, and found a better balance between her introverted and extroverted sides.
It's a reminder that personal growth is an ongoing process, not a destination.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep pushing those boundaries.
You never know what you might find just outside your comfort zone.